All right, and we are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to MBA Waves. I'm your host, Eric Lucrezia, and I'm joined, as always, by my fabulous co-host, Barra Sapir. Hi, Barra.
Hi.
How are you? How's it
Nice to
going
see
over there
you.
in San Francisco?
It's chilly today. It's
Yeah,
chilly today, but things are good, you know. Things are it's a weird world we're living in, but things are good overall.
indeed. It's cold and gray here too in Paris, but tomorrow we're expecting 21 degrees Celsius. So I don't know what this is in Fahrenheit, like mid 70s. So I'm looking forward to some sunshine.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. So today's episode of MBA Waves is all about entrepreneurship. Is an MBA right for an entrepreneur? And just to backtrack a little bit, who we are, MBA Waves is a weekly vidcast streaming live on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. And it's a platform that addresses loads of topics, everything related to MBAs, admission, GMAT, all that kind of stuff. So it's an opportunity to ask questions to us who are coaches. We're going to introduce our companies really quickly and then just jump right into it. So Barra is the founder of City Test Prep. And would you like to introduce your company, Barra?
Sure. So City Test Prep is a full service test preparation company. We deal with the four pillars of learning, which are content mastery, strategy, mindset, and time management. And so some students are great with time management, but they don't know the material on a test. And some people don't have a great mindset. So wherever a student is, we meet them and we help them manifest their best scores on their tests, GMATs, EA, GRE, really middle school through medical boards. And yeah, that's kind of about it with test prep and me right now.
And since we're talking about entrepreneurship, clearly you are an entrepreneur, as am I. Do you want to speak a little bit about maybe your background and like how you led to this path? It's relevant to the conversation today.
Sure. I was in graduate school for art history, and I was in a PhD program at University of Michigan. And I had to get into that program. I had actually taken the Princeton Review, which is a great, solid test prep program. And what I was finding though was that the teachers in front of me that were teaching me test prep, I was like, I can do that too. That's really interesting. Wound up working for them when I was in graduate school. And then I saw, when you work for a company that you were the customer of, right? You wind up seeing like all the back end, what doesn't work and what's not, what you can do better, right? You make a better mousetrap. And I found that students that I was working with were just falling through the cracks. And so I realized that, the material on tests don't change. It's a standardized test. The material, you can get the material, you can understand the material, you can learn the material. But the time management and the test anxiety piece, no one was addressing that. And even still, there's very few people in the field that address it. So I saw that there was a need, not only for students to do great on tests, but also to have these skills for life. Right, which actually made me feel really great about opening a company because it wasn't just a widget. I wasn't just helping students get to the schools they want to go to, but then helping them beyond. So that was sort of a business model that I really liked. I really appreciated that. So that's how I got into this and opened up my company in 2005, mostly because I met a bunch of business folks from UPenn and Chicago and realized, wow, I don't have to do this all on my own. Like I could work on the business, not just in the business, like the E-Myth, if you're familiar with that book. And so I just opened it up as a company, and now I mostly run the company, though I do teach speed reading. We just developed the online platform. And I think the exciting thing about being an entrepreneur is you see where things aren't working, and then you come up with ways of fixing it. And, our topic here is an MBA worth it. By the time I had the company, I mean, I have to tell you, I fantasize about going to business school. Like it's one of these things that it just seems so amazing. Right now, I just delegate and bring in business people to help me with the business. So here's the great reveal. I do think it's worthwhile for people, but not everybody. And if you're okay with bringing people in who have the know-how and have the connections and have the intuition, but also the theory behind it and the experience behind it, I think it's useful. But I often see sometimes where I don't have the knowledge that someone who went to business school, someone with an MBA has. And so I've learned a lot since 2005 and even before then when I was a solopreneur. How about you? Because you're new in that.
Yeah, I mean, I would say similar to you, it started off with something that you work in, and then you see, oh, that could be done better. And you want to kind of take the initiative and fill those gaps and try it out. And I also did not have a formal education in business. My studies are bio and chem, and then I have a master's in education, and I've worked in education all this time. And back in like 2000 to 2002, I was doing admissions and recruitment for Long Island University. And I realized along the way that there weren't a lot of resources out there for parents, but also these high school kids that really didn't understand so much about the whole application process. They would most of them, 95% of them, were very limited on their scope to which schools they would consider, either because they were nearby or they would just look at rankings. And I think they missed a whole lot. And so back then I was like 23, and I was like, okay, I can address that need, basically. And so I decided to kind of launch my own first admissions consulting firm. And I did that back then, very kind of scattered. I was a young kid, fresh out of college, but I just kind of did it without any sort of business training. And I realized there's a lot I don't know, and I could be doing a lot better if I had that, a little bit more structure, a little bit more of a formal education. And then fast forward a bunch of years, a couple of changes, ended up back in recruitment at SEC Business School. There for 6 years I was there. And during COVID, I went out on my own, not directly because of COVID, but that played into it where, was moving to digital. That allowed me to meet with clients around the world. And so it's just kind of a sort of perfect storm situation that led me to where I am now. And I aspire to be like you one day, where I'm more just, managing and bringing in new business. But I'm still kind of a young company with Candidate Coach, and about a year and a half in full-time doing that with mostly MBA students, but, masters and some exec as well. So like thinking about the topic, like, what does it even mean to be an entrepreneur? Like, someone once said to me that he thought there's a certain degree of narcissism required, a certain ingredient of narcissism required to have the chutzpah, to go out like on your own and do it, to say, hey, I think I can do this better than what's already out there. And I think there's some truth to that. Not this like very toxic kind of narcissism, but a certain level of self-love and confidence that you think you can do better than what's already out there. You know what I mean?
Well, it's interesting because what I've noticed so much in the past 10 years, because I'm in the Bay Area more than in New York, and I'm just seeing there's so much entrepreneurship in the Bay Area, and it just feels like there's a different kind of accessibility to entrepreneurship here. But even yesterday, I posted something where 2 kids from Harvard put together this hosting site for Ukrainian refugees, right? And they saw a need. Airbnb has been picking up the pace, right? They've reached out to people. I've seen ads on TV about this and articles, and Uber has also, but these are all entrepreneurs that really feel like they have the pulse of what's happening societally. Airbnb, it started off in someone's room, right? In someone's room, and they just needed a place to crash. It was sort of like couch surfing turned into something that was leverageable and lucrative. So I do see in the past 10 years, so many people seeing that there's problems and coming up with solutions for them, which I think is super exciting. I even read, I don't know if this would be under entrepreneurship, but there's 300 hackers that someone has sort of brought together to like hack into the Russian IT infrastructure, right? And so to me, it's really exciting because it is problem solving, whether it's narcissistic or not. It is the confidence, right? It's believing that you actually have something that's going to be meaningful. But I think that where the MBA does come in is, even though you have a great idea, how do you really get word out, right? If you don't have investors, big dollars behind you, then how do you let people know? And that's a learning curve. That's certainly a learning curve for me. I mean, I'm in a boutique with Test Prep, with City Test Prep, but Mindflow, our new platform, we're doing, more work around marketing than I've done before, because City Test Prep was word of mouth, right? And most of the test prep companies that are out there are mid to small size, and the big guys have big budgets, right? So when you when you get an MBA, I think that my experience has been talking to people with MBAs is that you really understand inbound, outbound. How do you how do you do the thing that you do to get people to know that they actually do need your service or they need your thing, right? And how do you cultivate that piece, which is, I didn't go to business school to figure that piece out, right? That's a piece that I
You
bring in
figured it out
people.
along the way.
I figured out pieces of
Yeah.
it along the way. Yeah, pieces of it. I'm still learning. There's lots to learn. Things change quickly.
Obviously, you can start your own company without doing an MBA or even any degree in business. If you have a certain business acumen, if you're surrounded by good people who have, you're modeling after, or that you can consult, mentors, and all that stuff too. But it is definitely like kind of a hot topic or an argument. Like, well, should an entrepreneur? Sorry, yeah, should an entrepreneur go for an MBA? Because like, in a way, the definition of an entrepreneur is like you're sort of breaking away from what's already there, right? So like an MBA, which business schools are very much, I would say, kind of driven by the corporate world in a lot of ways. And so why would you go to a program that's sort of like in this box when, as an entrepreneur, you're thinking outside of the box, right? So it's a little bit counterintuitive for a lot of people, and I think that's why a lot of people say no, that it's not. But when I used to do MBA fairs for ESSEC, I was going to like 75 of them a year, maybe more. It was insane. And I would say maybe like a quarter of the people that I would meet with on the stand, like at those MBA fairs, like Access MBA, MBA Tour, and so forth, QS, maybe like a quarter of the people would mention entrepreneurship as the reason they wanted to do the MBA or why they were there talking to me in the first place. Some of them were people who were like, I already am an entrepreneur. My company's young. Figured it out a bit along the way, but I do want to have that boost of a formal education and all the things that come along with an MBA. Other people are like, oh yeah, I want to start a business right after, or maybe like 10 years down the road, which, like, spoiler alert, I think is sometimes more realistic. And then there's people coming from like the family businesses who they have that upbringing in the entrepreneurial world from their parents and seeing how they do it, and they're either going to take over their family business or they're going to launch something on their own. So you get to see these profiles, right? And it's a lot. Like a quarter of the people who I'd meet at fairs would say they wanted to be entrepreneurs. In the reality, though, once you realize how difficult it can be sometimes, and especially if you're doing an MBA abroad, like in a foreign country, there's different laws. Like, do you need to have a visa or citizenship or like funding and all that kind of stuff? It's a lot harder. And I think a lot of those people, majority of those 25% that I mentioned, end up going for a job first. Because first of all, you got to pay back your loans. Usually there's some debt you're dealing with, right? And there's a whole set of things you need to learn and like really think through developing your business plan and getting investors and all that kind of stuff that, an MBA immediately after, starting a company immediately after your MBA is often not really realistic. The other thing is that I think a lot of people want to gain some more experience working for a company for a couple of years, maybe like 2, 3, or even more years before they'll actually go out on their own. And in that time, they're saving up money because normally after they've completed their MBA, they've had a big boost in salary, so they're able to stash a bunch of cash away, getting to develop that network more, and then maybe, like example, 5 years after their MBA, then they're maybe more ready to do that, to start that company. I think that's a bit more realistic, but it's.
You said something super
Go ahead.
interesting. Sorry, you said something super interesting where it's like that the entrepreneur is a little bit like a renegade, right? Like they're the maverick that goes against. But I think that in order to understand going against something, you actually have to understand what the status quo is, right? You have to understand. When I was in art school, we needed to learn the classics. We needed to learn how to work with materials in order to actually launch beyond that. And I do think that there's some value in understanding what you're doing different, and also to have a net to fall back in on, because you can create hybrid systems within a business. And it's also creating that network, like you mentioned network. Even if you are an entrepreneur, having that network of business colleagues and professionals that span across different industries, I think is super useful and helpful. So I think that that's another reason that people will go to business schools, to create that network, to create that community and that landscape for themselves, and even attend particular schools in order to have a particular landscape, because a school might be quite good in that particular field, right? So
Sure.
I do think that my not having an MBA, not coming from business background, I do also have a master's in education, and I do think education kind of is sales ultimately, right? Like you have to sell ideas to students. You have to get buy-in. So it's funny how all of these different skills can be applied to business, but business school itself is going to be bringing in the case studies and understanding how business works, and then the experience, also the real world experience or internships that students have to really use what they've learned in the theory and see what actually works in the real world or not.
100%. You know, before I go down that road, I just wanted to mention, I think that, you know, one of the big arguments for not going for an MBA when you want to start a company is the cost, right? An MBA is going to run you at the cheapest, and like talking in Europe, maybe 30, 40,000 euros for the year. And then on the high end in the US, like a lot of the 2-year programs, like the 160,000 USD kind of range. I mean, it's a lot of money, right? And when you're starting a company, you need money, you need capital, you probably need investors. You're probably not going to go in alone. Especially during an MBA, very often you make contacts, other people in the program who are like-minded and may want to start a company with you. And that's a great way to go about it. So it's very collaborative, and something you mentioned, you need buy-in. It's all about people. It's about relationships. It's all about how to connect with other people, how to sell your idea, whether they're going to be investors or customers or whatever, spreading the word. You really do. It's all about people. Right. So, yeah. So, I mean, like pivoting away from like the argument against, which for me is really just money. Arguments for, I think, you know, come in spades. Like, first of all, is the classes are going to take. I think these days, or as the selling points of a business school, like classes in entrepreneurship have for a while now been like a selling point that they'll advertise that they have. But beyond that, like classes in sustainability and innovation, they've been buzzwords for a bunch of years now. But it's true. I mean, those are the things that are going to help shape your understanding of things, inspire you with ideas, whether it's case studies, you see what's worked, what hasn't worked. Something that I really liked, you know, talking with some of the professors when I worked at ESSEC, like I asked them what their arguments were for, you know, students coming in for an MBA and wanting to start a company, is the idea of learning to fail efficiently, right? So failure is inevitable, right? It's part of the process. And it's how quickly you learn from that failure, make adjustments, pick yourself up and go on to the next iteration of your idea, is going to determine how successful you are in the end, right? Because I think like we're all human, and it can be very heavy, right? You've put your heart and soul into your idea, you've perfected it, you've worked on it so much, right? And you've put it out there into the universe, and most likely it's going to flop like a bunch of times, and that's taxing. It's heavy, and it drains you, you know. And I think it's super important to learn how to very quickly assess what didn't work, make those adjustments, and then launch it again. And you have to be persistent.
Pivot. How do you pivot gracefully?
Exactly. That idea of failing efficiently, I really appreciated. But yeah, again, more like pragmatically speaking, how to create a business plan. You know, when you do an MBA, whether you're going to go into the corporate world and be CEO, hopefully one day, if that's your path, or starting a small business, I mean, you still need to understand all of those things of running a business, right? You need to understand the finances. You need to know how to market your business. You need to, you know, the accounting, there's an HR aspect. So assuming you're more than just one person, right? With your small business that you're going to launch. So all of those pieces of a big company or a very small one, those pieces are there, and you need to learn them. And that's definitely what an MBA helps you learn. But a lot of MBA programs and business schools in general, they also have incubators. That's something you hear about a lot. I don't know if you've heard much about incubators.
Yeah, in fact, there's a lot of incubators in the Bay Area for people who are doing different sort of tech projects. So I do hear about people starting those or being part of those.
Yeah, definitely. I mean,
some cost money, and then some the investors pay for it because they want to have a piece of your project, your business when you get started.
Yeah, I mean, there's some big incubators out there. Like Y Combinator, Techstars, Venture Catalysts. I mean, there's some famous ones that are open to the public, but a lot of business schools have their own in-house incubators, which is also a selling point you'll see. And just what does that mean exactly? I think one big thing is you're surrounded by other, you know, burgeoning entrepreneurs, and there's a certain buzz, a certain energy that kind of like, you know, what you get in co-working, right? That certain synergy that you can, you know, build off of each other. But there's also usually mentors there, mentors are people who are either professors or successful entrepreneurs. Sometimes you have access to lawyers or accountants to give you some of those legal or numbers insights that are going to really help you make your business idea into something that's a viable plan, right? Mm-hmm. And then connecting you to investors as well, which is often a big piece of it. It can be expensive to launch something, and sometimes you have these angel investors that will love your idea and that can turn into something. So these are a lot of the advantages I think that come with going for the MBA if you want to start something up. Getting like messages like crazy.
Oh, good. Well, are you getting messages about what we're talking
about? No, it's
about?
Like yes.
Or like where you're going for dinner tonight.
Yeah, more like who's coming to the gym after this tonight. So, like statistically speaking, apparently, the age where most people are successful as entrepreneurs is around 35, and I thought that was interesting.
So much older
because a lot of people go to business school. Well, I think it's a few factors. If you're looking at the States, the average age for doing MBA is like 27, 28, 29. Europe, touch later, 29, 30. But still, like there's that time to, again, pay back your loans. There's the time of like gaining experience, like professional experience, understanding how companies work. That just comes with, working for companies. I mean, very few and far between are the Zuckerbergs that are, coming up with an idea in university that become global hits with, billions of users. And that time that it takes to fail and start again and try and maybe abandon that project and then come up with a new idea. So I think statistically speaking, it ends up being around that age of 35 is what I've heard. So in terms of like, if you're like thinking about an MBA now and your motivation is because you want to start a company, to be an entrepreneur, great. But I think it's very important to think what's realistic in terms of timing. Like, do you want to do this right after, or is it more realistic to work for a company for a little while, make some cash, build the network? And like we said already, it's all about people. So the network is so important. I think one of the greatest things that an MBA program delivers to you is a lifetime network of people from that brand who are much more likely to reach a hand out and help you, whether it's about, oh, I know someone who might want to invest, or I know someone who's good at that, connecting with people that can do that, or investors, or just spreading the word about your idea. So the network is extremely powerful. And I think that's one of your best tools coming out of an MBA program. So wanted to mention some of the schools as a little shout out. According to U.S. News Report, some of the best schools in the U.S., Babson, Stanford, MIT, Harvard, UC Berkeley, so of course Bay Area, Wharton, #1 in FT this year, and Michigan Ross with their list of the top 7. But Europe as well, like in the UK, Imperial, LBS, HEC and ESSEC, both in France, they're pretty known for entrepreneurship. I know very well ESSEC Incubator, doing good things. CBS, so that's Copenhagen Business School, really well known for, I would say, sustainability. And I think what really plays into their advantage at CBS is because Denmark is a country that as a whole is quite sustainable. It's not like they're a school in a country and they're fighting an uphill battle to get that support. Like when you're there, you can tell it's a very clean, environmentally friendly, forward-thinking, liberal country. So Copenhagen does really well with the whole sustainability concept, if that's what you're interested in, and applying that into a startup context is a good place to be. What else, Bara?
What else? Well, I was just thinking, what I had done, because I didn't go to business school, is that there were resources available to me that I could see someone, if they're not sure if they want to go to business school, they can take advantage of different things that are available. There was something through the city of New York called the WeBo program that did similar things that you were talking about, a workshop and business opportunities. And it was so interesting. Each week we would have a different topic that we would go over. 1 week would be accounting, 1 week would be human resources, 1 week would be marketing, 1 would be legal. And we used our own business as a case study. And then we worked in the classroom. So it had this vibe that I could imagine was similar to business school, but it was also, it was so removed that whole process, right? We didn't have to take math classes. We were just looking at our business. And so I thought that that was really helpful. So if someone's not sure, they can still probably find local resources and then just see if they really want to take it to the next level. Because I think that the programs
Sure.
that I did were just kind of, they were able to let me see what I needed, because you really need a lot when you start a business, not just cash, but you really need to understand what you were talking about, accounting and the legal piece of it and insurance and the managerial skills and even the communication skills, you know, the soft skills. So all of there are things that are available, but it's very a la carte, and you have to do your research to find out if it's good. The Weibo program was amazing. I also did Marie Forleo's B School, which really isn't B School. It's actually like a very specific piece of your marketing and how to become an expert in your field online. And I thought that it was a great course, but it's not business school. So what I love about when I talk to my business school students is really finding out the courses that they take and the impact that they make on them, and the impact that they can have going into the future. It's leadership school. Ultimately, business school is leadership school. Entrepreneurship is leadership school within leadership training. So, you know, because an entrepreneur is very different than someone who's going into finance, right? It's a different mindset. It's a different way of approaching it. So if you're not sure, you know, start small and see what your community offers or what's available, and start to take courses and see if you get really jazzed about it and you can see the value, then yeah, you want to launch into a program, I would say.
100%. And you know what, also I wanted to mention before we wrap up, which we're going to do in a couple of minutes, people who are looking at MBA programs and worry that, oh, my experience in a startup or my experience as an entrepreneur won't count towards work experience. And I would say with fair confidence that, oh, yes, it does count. This is you know, not just having work experience at a company, but taking the risk to go out there and try something out on your own. I mean, in most cases, admissions offices would look upon that more than kindly, that you're courageous, in fact, and creative, and you've tried to make something happen, whether it worked well or didn't. So that almost always should count as the work experience you need. And the other thing I would mention is that when you're applying, the way you sort of sell yourself in your essays, like your storyline, right? Don't hesitate to talk about that. Your experiences and what you went through and what your goals are. If your goals are in the future to start up a company, I think it's a mature and realistic way to speak about it in the context of, okay, this is this, like, say you're in San Francisco and you're applying to a school in France, where I am, for example. Having a bit of a sense of what the laws are here that will allow you to start a company or not. Do you need to be French, or do you need to just have a residence card? Like, just doing a little bit of research to make sure that the admissions office knows that you have a developed idea going ahead. You know, that speaks well upon you, that you've done your homework and that you have a realistic idea of what's ahead of you. Because schools want to know that you have thought through your goals, short, medium, and long term. So if your dream is to start up a company in France, first of all, why? And what steps do you know so far that you need to take to get there? Like, whether it's about language or visas or whatever, money, and how that school can bridge the gap to help you get there. That shows a real well-researched pathway, and that's what we help you do, us coaches.
Yeah, and that's across the board for any business school. That's really important for them to know that you've done your homework. But I can come up with lots of reasons I would want to go to France.
Look,
Absolutely.
preaching to the choir. I'm here.
I know.
All right. Well, that's all I got today for this episode. Anything else you want to add, Bara?
Just, you know, it's a big decision and it's an important decision to make. And if you feel like it has value, to get the support that you need to get, you know, improve your chances of getting into the schools. You know, it's talking to folks like Eric and myself so that your candidacy looks as good as it can. It's really bringing your best foot forward, ultimately.
Definitely.
Just a plug.
All right. Well,
Just a
totally. Hey, that's what we're here for. So, all right. Well, thank you, Bara. Thanks for joining me tonight. And next week, we're going to look at something very, very techy. The title of next week's episode is How the Metaverse Will Solve the Problem of Online MBAs. So as you all know, online MBAs have existed for some time now. especially since COVID, everything went to online. Some things have stayed that way, some things have come back or a more hybrid form, but there's an inherent challenge of like contact and networking. So this is an idea that we wanted to explore next week. So hope you join us for MBA Waves next week. The program schedule is, as always, at mbawaves.com. If you'd like to reach either of us, our contacts are on the website. If there's any ideas you want to discuss, episodes you want to dive into, happy to hear from you. And thank you very much.
Thanks, Eric. Great to see you.
Bye, Baron. Bye, everyone.